So this is where we left off at the last video. Have the gauge with the new ring and the glass, and then you have to crimp this metal bezel back over the gauge, and that holds the glass in place. And what I'll do is cut in a few video clips of what I've used to use in the past. So I would basically reverse the process that I did to remove the bezel by using a flat bladed screwdriver to push in and crimp it down around in as many places as I needed to get a fairly tight fit. So I'll show you what that looks like here. Okay, so I'm getting my gauge put back together. I have the clear PETG ring around the inside to replace the broken one. I did do some crimping, so I put it down and then used a flat bladed screwdriver and went around, crimped it so it's not going to fall off. But I think I'm going to do the same thing here, is just put a couple of runs of this stuff, if I can get it out. I just want to make sure it's not going to rattle. Anyway, that crimping the bezel with a screwdriver, it does work. It's a little bit time consuming, and it doesn't produce a really nice clean job, although technically you won't be able to see that because it's behind the face of the gauge when it's installed. So this is a professional tool. I found this on a forum. I'll put a link to this thread in the video description. But anyway, somebody had posted a picture of this tool, and you can see it's basically a support for the face of the gauge, and then there's a thing that presses the gauge down into this holder, and then right here you've got basically a roller bearing. Somehow this lever here, I guess, gets pushed down, and then there must be some sort of a rotating mechanism here. It looks like this might be a crank that cranks the gauge around, and this roller then rolls the back edge of the bezel down as you press on it. That was just part of this thread. It was a military vehicle message forum, the G503 forum. This guy came up with something to use what he had. He had some sort of homemade power drill wood turning lathe that somebody had put together. He found it on eBay. So it was kind of like a do-it-yourself lathe. So what he did was he machined or turned a wooden support to fit the gauge into, very similar to that tool. And then he made a roller, got a roller bearing, and I guess he used some valve stems and guides from an old engine and basically welded up a tool to put into his lathe. Yeah, so you can see here's his drill chuck from his power drill. Here's the wooden holder that he turned. Here's the gauge, and then on the cross slide of his homemade lathe, he's got this valve stem with the roller bearing on it, and so he can turn the drill on slowly and rotate the gauge here as it rolls against that bearing. You adjust the angle of the bearing and basically roll that edge of the bezel over, and Bob's your uncle, as they say. So yeah, that was a pretty inspiring thread that I found, and it's like, I think I can make something like that. I have a lathe. Okay, so this is the tool I made. I'll just show you a few still images here, and then in a follow-up video I'll show you this in action. So I had a quick change tool holder here, and I took a piece of aluminum. It was about 1 inch thick, just a scrap I had, and I machined down a 1/2 inch step here to fit into the tool holder. It looked like he was at roughly 45 degrees, so I cut a 45-degree angle and tapped a hole in here for a bolt and put a roller bearing there on the end. And there's a picture from the other side. You can see the tool holder and my tool with the bearing on the end. One thing I did was I shaved down the head of the bolt. I probably would have been better off using like a panhead bolt here, but I had a hex head. I had the bearing, I had the bolt, I had the block of aluminum, so I used what I had and made it work. So here's the threaded hole for the bolt, the bearing on the end. Yeah, so that's basically the bezel rolling tool that I came up with, inspired by that G503 web forum post. And in the next video, I'll show you how I made the tool, and then we can actually see how it works. So stay tuned for that, and as always, thanks for watching.